the Manor Farm and IFA Grower Group developed their own carbon footprint tool for broiler production, and that was selected as a good practice winner. We were fortunate to have plenty of winners picked, but I think what stood out for me from the learnings from it, from cycle 1 right through to cycle 3, was that sometimes the good practice isn't always something brand new or novel, or something that you don't have to have the newest idea or the flashiest technology, but if it works, it works.
Hello and welcome to the Poultry Edge with me, Michael McKeon. In this episode, we're going to learn more about the European Horizon 2022 project called BroilerNet, which Teagasc was a partner in for the last number of years and is now finishing up. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Rebecca Tierney, who is a Teagasc National Poultry Advisor and who's normally the host for this podcast, but is now in the hot seat today as she was leading the research project.
Yeah, so the BroilerNet project was part of the Horizon 2022 to 2026. So the project has finished just in July gone by. But the aim of the project was to basically enhance the resilience and the sustainability of our broiler sector across Europe. It was an opportunity, I suppose, for the industry in terms of the key stakeholders, the broiler producers themselves, and academia to all work together on a number of key challenges that were identified. It gave our producers and key stakeholders a platform to exchange knowledge on key issues in the sector. I suppose they're similar to our discussion groups, is what we were trying to achieve. The three themes that was identified and worked upon were environmental sustainability, obviously very topical across agriculture. Animal welfare always has been a concern, but a lot more attention been drawn to that. And then animal health management. There was 13 countries involved: Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Greece, the UK, Netherlands, Poland, Sweden, Finland, Slovenia, Germany, and then finally ourselves in Ireland. So a brilliant project all around, lots learned, and probably lots more that could have been worked on, and hopefully we'll see a BroilerNet 2.0 as there's talks ongoing for that. So it was a very interesting project with lots of outputs.
Very good. You mentioned a huge amount of countries there. How did you break down the roles, responsibilities? Did Ireland have a particular role within the project, or were all countries just covering all roles across the whole spectrum?
So initially Ireland was joined as an academia partner, and what that meant was we were part of the kind of the research side of it. Of course, Teagasc being advisor education research, that's where they pulled us in. But I did feel that Ireland had the potential to have what they called a BIN, which was a broiler innovative network, whereby the farmers themselves could input to this project. And I felt we had huge knowledge there and potentially lots to be learned from the countries involved, the UK and then across into mainland Europe. So we were the 13th BIN, as it were. Then we weren't intended to be that, but we did have plenty of inputs to it, and thankfully some results for us. So that was our role, to input on what research could be needed, and then to have our own bin here in Ireland.
As we all know, we have some very good producers here in Ireland. I suppose, did we get any of the good practice winners from the project, or how did that turn out in the end?
Yeah, so how the project worked essentially was the farmers themselves put in what they identified as the key issues under each of the themes that I mentioned earlier. There was then a thematic expert network, in which Ireland also had representatives on, and they picked what they believed to be the key challenge that needed tackling that year. The producers then met again and described potential good practices to deal with that issue. So if you take environmental sustainability as one, energy use on farm was one. So Ireland actually had a good practice winner for that, the installation of solar PV arrays. And John Haughey and Aidan Brady were the two farmers that put that one in for us. And that was selected as a good practice winner in cycle 1. And then in year 2 or cycle 2, on the animal health side, looking at water quality and how to improve water quality was one. So we had Pat Greenan had the bacteria reduction by water treatment through a UV system, and that was actually selected twice in cycle 3 as well. So we had five good practice winners in total. So we had the installation of the solar PV array, we had the bacteria reduction by water treatment, we had the split house feeding, which the house is split in two at the point of thinning to reduce stress at thinning for birds. The using of the UV bulbs for reducing enterococci, again, very important for water quality and animal health management. And then something that is on the tip of everyone's tongues is the carbon footprint. And so the Manor Farm and IFA Grower Group developed their own carbon footprint tool for broiler production, and that was selected as a good practice winner. So we were fortunate to have plenty of winners picked, but maybe just unfortunate not to have the champion picked on one of our years. But I think what stood out for me from the learnings from it, from cycle 1 right through cycle 3, was that sometimes the good practice isn't always something brand new or novel or something that's thinking outside the box. Sometimes it is just those things that is day to day, or that we may view as day to day. Again, solar panels as an example. The vast majority of our broiler farms are either looking at or have installed solar panels. Not seen to be something maybe over exciting or over new, but clearly works. So there was lots to be learned from that, in that, you don't have to have the newest idea or the flashiest technology, but if it works, it works. And that's what stood out to me from this project.
And just to follow on, I suppose, on that, it's great, first of all, to hear so many of the Irish winners and the Irish projects. That's great to hear. And I suppose it just reflects on the good producers we have in the country. But you would have seen some of the good practices from the other countries all across Europe. Is there any of them there that you kind of found that was particularly interesting? They don't have to be groundbreaking, but just maybe simple or very interesting, or very something that could be adopted very easily on farms here?
Yeah, so I suppose in my role as an English speaker, and as we see a lot of other countries involved, that their first language may not be English, I got the role of fact checking or proofreading all of the fact sheets that are available. So I actually had eyes on every one of the good practices at one point. But I suppose there's definitely one standout, and as you said, Michael, it's not groundbreaking, it's not even a piece of technology. It was a French good practice. It was to do with reducing stress on farm for birds, but it was the Anvil Charter. What the Anvil Charter was, it's actually looking after the catching team. And you're thinking, well, what's that got to do with birds? But the key thing was that when the catching team arrived on farm, there was like a canteen area or a quiet area for them to have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, drink of water, small bite to eat. And they went into the house of birds, relaxed, fed, watered themselves. And there was a reduction then in condemnation of birds and DOAs arriving to the factory. So I think for that, it was very interesting that an area that maybe doesn't receive a lot of focus, and an area maybe that we struggle with in terms of catching teams, if we were to focus on that, and on them, very important people within our sector, that it could have a positive effect for our birds and for the birds that reach our shelf in the shops. So I thought that one was particularly interesting. It wasn't a huge investment on farm. I think that the farmer that submitted that good practice said it cost in the region of €3,000 for that, and just providing the food and water then. And then another one, I suppose ammonia emissions is something that we talk a lot about here when it comes to planning and difficulty in getting planning. There was a good practice submitted from, I think it was from France again, but it was actually to do with litter aeration. So it was a small little kind of self-propelled machine the farmer pushed along in the house, and it just rotated the litter a number of times throughout the flock, and it just kept the litter in good quality. It improved footpad dermatitis scores, it reduced the ammonia in the house, and then the litter itself which is something we like to try and focus on, is better quality. So for the end user, it was actually a better quality product as well. So I suppose those two kind of stood out to me as being particularly interesting, and I suppose maybe of key concern to our sector at the minute. So potentially not huge money to invest, a little bit more of time and effort, all right, but potential gains from that.
As you said, not a huge investment in it. It's interesting you're saying about the catchers. I know on the dairy side, they've done a good bit of research and they found that the farmers that had their breakfast before they went milking had a much lower somatic cell count with the cows, that they're able to manage the cows better and that they were more relaxed with the cows and didn't stress the cows as much. So I suppose it all comes back to human nature when you think about it. And it's the small things that make a big difference sometimes as well. So yeah, no, it's interesting to see that across sectors. If listeners wanted to find out more about BroilerNet, is there information available online, or is it something you can print off, or just to see some of the ideas that maybe even if you only pick one or two for their own farm, is there one or two things that they could adopt? Where would they find that information?
Very simply, go to Google and type in BroilerNet. There's a whole BroilerNet webpage with the Knowledge Hub is the place they need to go to. There's fact sheets, there's EIP abstracts, there's some lovely videos, so some infographics done, and some great videos done, interviews with the farmers that submitted the good practices. So there's ample information available there. But the fact sheets, they're free to download. And as you say, Michael, pull one or two of them. And we printed off some of those last year's that we found particularly interesting and had them available at our broiler conference, which will be coming up in September. And I will have them there again. So come along and have a chat with us, and I can show you some of them and show you where to find that information. But just Google BroilerNet and you'll find the BroilerNet Knowledge Hub with plenty of information there.
And suppose just last question, maybe to broaden out the chat a little bit further. Are there any more research projects on the poultry side of things that are in the pipeline, or can you tell listeners what they can expect in years to come?
Yeah, so look, we're always looking out for kind of new research projects, new innovative ideas that need more explanation within the poultry sector. Whether that be improving productivity, reducing costs, looking at environmental sustainability, and even collaborating with the likes of the tillage sector. We do have some layer projects in the pipeline, shall we say, at the minute, and hopeful that they'll come to fruition for us. But we're looking closely at future broiler options as well, and our own colleague Declan Bolton would be looking at, I suppose, the food, health and safety side of things there on Campy and Salmonella. So there is some research ongoing on them, but we will endeavour to be part of more broiler future projects in the future.
Very good. I suppose watch this space or listen to this podcast going forward. I suppose that's the secret, and hopefully we'll hear more from that. Many thanks for your time in giving us a rundown on the BroilerNet. And as you said, hopefully there may be a BroilerNet 2.0 in the future, and some of the producers can be able to contribute to that and see can they win the grand prize at the end of the day for that.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Michael.
That's all for today's podcast. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to rate, review and follow the Poultry Edge wherever you get your podcasts.